It's been a while since I played Gears of War here, so thought I would replay it maybe on my Xbox Series X.
Wait, is that Gears of War on PlayStation 5?
What are you talking about? Gears of War isn't on the PlayStation 5.
Right, Gears of War doesn't come to PlayStation 5 until August. Alright, have a good rest of your day.
Wait, what? Hey everyone, how's it going? To the level here, and today I want to talk about console exclusives as it's just kind of sad how we're seeing less and less exclusives now, with Gears of War coming to PlayStation 5 in August and things like that, where we see a lot of Microsoft just titles going to other platforms. Now, for the indie ones, it kind of makes sense, especially stuff like Super Lucky's Tale or Cuphead. They felt right at home on the Switch, right? But or Ori and the Blind Forest, Will of the Wisp. But yeah, it's just kind of sad to see because, like what I loved about consoles were the exclusives, were the unique games you got for these because they were fun, creative, unique, different, and even though these ones, a lot of them could be, played on PC, and I mean, all of them could, but I just say a lot because, you got some unique consoles, you got some unique accessories for some of these consoles, right? But, you could play all these on, like, PC, but it was so special with consoles is kind of what justified a lot of the console purchases, is you weren't just getting this convenience of a machine to just put a game in, play it, and there you go. You also got completely unique experiences that we're kind of losing now because so many games are on like every platform. And again, I kind of have this mixed reaction where I love that. I love that everyone can play these games on whatever platform. It's great that more and more games are becoming accessible for these consoles. I do wish there were, companies cared more about physical, but nevertheless, these games are at least on these platforms, and, I wish they care more about game preservation, but, that's really cool that people get to play these, but on the other hand, it's just kind of sad to see that these franchises that defined a company are kind of disappearing now, right? So, I just want to kind of go back in a little bit, not cover everything because there's way too many exclusives and things like that. And yeah, sorry, I meant to have this video up last week, but I still needed more gameplay and I was a bit busy, right? So yeah, I want to get done for this week, so but yeah, it was such a cool experience. And yeah, we'll kind of start just talking about some 8 and 16-bit stuff, and yeah, kind of talk about the ones I sort of grew up with, didn't really have SNK stuff, no Neo Geo, no Atari systems, right? So yeah, there's going to be a lot of these other exclusives missing, but, for these early days of, your Master System and Genesis Mega Drive and NES, Super Nintendo, along with the handhelds, like, man, it was just such a fun, unique time. And these companies coming in, they, to sell your hardware, you needed the software, right? And so you would have completely different experiences from each console because they would make these exclusives, and third parties would make exclusives too. That was what was really cool. Now, for 8 and 16-bit, you were limited on the hardware, so a lot of the games played in a similar manner. So, like, you got really great games, and the way they had to be creative is the game mechanics themselves. Like playing a platformer, you would have completely different ones, but they will have different power-ups or different abilities, and, of course, different levels and music characters, right, to stand out from other platformers out there. And that was really neat. And then you get into Gen 5 where we get the start of kind of 3D consoles, and or having a lot of consoles be 3D with the N64, PlayStation 1, and Sega Saturn. We won't really talk about like Virtual Boy or anything, but for these, it was just so cool. Like, yes, Super Mario 64 is far from my favorite game anymore. There are a lot of issues I have with it. I still have fun with it, but yeah, there's still issues. But when playing it for the first time, man, it was mind-blowing. It was just incredible to be able to walk in this 3D space, to climb a tree, and things that seem so basic now were so surreal back then. And then we get, I was going to jump, but I want to talk about this a bit more because during this time too, we were starting to see these companies really establish themselves, after the Sony Nintendo partnership fell through. Sony with the PlayStation 1, you got a lot of kind of platforming action adventure titles on there, along with big RPGs, right? And making deals with like Squaresoft at the time and everything like that. It was just really cool to see. And my favorite PlayStation 1 game of all time, which might surprise people, is Jade Cocoon here. I love this game so much, and there's so many great games on PlayStation 1, and definitely RPGs with Legend of Dragoon, Final Fantasy 7 through 9, and Tactics, and you have like ones I still need to play, like Legend of Legacy or Legaia and Parasite Eve, things like that. But man, I love Jade Cocoon. I just love it so much, and I recognize it has issues, but I think all of us have that one game that is super nostalgic to us, that we praise it higher than a lot of other people for those types of reasons. But man, I just love how this game was like fully voice acted for the most part, and very good voice acting for the time too. And yeah, this is a game I love replaying so much. And then my first PlayStation 1 game being Tiny Tank, and or at least among my first PlayStation 1 games. And man, this is still fun to play. It controls surprisingly well, because a lot of PlayStation 1 games like Siphon Filter and all that don't really control that well anymore. But this one, like, there's still some frustrating levels I find, but it is a ton of fun, a hidden gem. And yeah, I love that uniqueness. I love that these games just felt like they belonged just on this console. Now we can jump into Gen 6, because Gen 6 is probably like the most creative, fun, like, generation of games out there. Like, sadly, Sega, their last one was Dreamcast, but you also have the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox joining the fight. And man, it was cool. Like, on the original Xbox, yes, you got some random Xbox only titles, but it was really cool to see what they had on their end. Most of them didn't really stick with them, or didn't really get too many sequels or anything, except for Halo and Fable. But it was still really cool to see this system kind of join in and create a lot of unique experiences. It also helped really establish online gaming for consoles, because other consoles were having online and everything, but I feel like the original Xbox really just kind of set that standards of, hey, this is how online gaming could be one day, right? With, headsets and things like that, because we only really experience a lot of, like, that deep online gaming for PCs. So it was just unique to see these games. And yeah, GameCube, like, I mean, we need Chibi Robo back, but there's so many cool titles that Nintendo had there, and new ones they created with, Pikmin, and it was just, it was a blast to play. And then on PlayStation 2, of course, that was the home of, again, more action-adventure titles, because Sony had this weird kind of trend of not really sticking with certain IPs. Like, yes, Crash and Spyro they didn't actually own, but other ones they kind of just leave in the dust, like, it's weird, but, they created, like, having their studios have, Sucker Punch with Sly Cooper, and, you have Jak and Daxter, you have Ratchet and Clank now. It's really neat to see, and of course the home of JRPGs everywhere on this system, and it's big reason why it's still my favorite system of all time, because this is how I completely fell in love with JRPGs. I was falling in love on the PlayStation 1, but this was the system that, yeah, I just loved so much. And then moving on to Gen 7, and this was a pretty interesting time too, because, you had the Wii, where Nintendo wasn't going HD at this time and inventing, like, motion controls. I shouldn't say inventing, but really popularizing it, man. I can't speak, man. But, really making it accessible for anyone to pick up and play. It was easy to learn the controls. Not my favorite system by far because of the motion controls, but nevertheless, you got super unique experiences because this console created something that you couldn't get anywhere else. Now, Microsoft and Sony later tried with their own versions, of Kinect and the PlayStation Move, just not nearly as effective, right? But still, and then on the Xbox side, they were trying to appeal to Japanese audiences, so you got many JRPGs on this system during a time where people were kind of just, not that interested in JRPGs, or I should say, it just seemed like the Western audience wasn't that interested, like North America, and it was just kind of weird because, the PlayStation 2 was such a big hit, but, Microsoft, I commend them for trying. Wasn't the best console to have these JRPG experiences because, yeah, they just wasn't, Xbox wasn't a Japan, like, favorite, right? So, yeah, but still, it was cool to see them try. You got two of the best ones in Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey, especially Lost Odyssey, right? And you got a bunch of timed exclusives with Enchanted Arms and things like Eternal Sonata, Star Ocean: The Last Hope, I believe, like, they started on Xbox 360 before getting ports on PS3. I know for sure Enchanted Arms was because originally it was an only Xbox 360 title, and, some exclusives with Infinite Undiscovery and things like The Last Remnant that were on the 360 and PC. Unplayable on 360. Footage you'd be seeing is the PlayStation 4 remaster because, yeah, you can't. It's borderline unplayable on 360, but still, it was cool to see these ones. And of course, Microsoft was establishing itself as this big home for shooters because at the time created the best controller for shooters in the Xbox 360 controller. And while the 360 itself was a faulty piece of hardware until we got the slim versions of 360, still it was cool to see, Halo take off, and of course Gears of War really becoming a staple, right? And yeah, it was just neat. And then PlayStation 3 was continuing their whole, like, again, action adventure genre and new IPs again with Uncharted, and, there was Folklore, there was Infamous, right? It was just, yeah, and Little Big Planet, things like that. It was just really cool to see, and you picked a lot of these consoles for certain games, right? And yeah, I just love that. And then Gen 8, it started off with, companies trying, because with Xbox One, like, the launch titles had stuff like Dead Rising 3 and Rise Son of Rome, and bunch of Kinect stuff, but yeah. And on the PlayStation 4 side, you had things like Killzone Shadowfall and Knack, which was very hyped up, but didn't live up to that hype because, a lot of people were kind of hoping for another Spyro type adventure, this open world type of game and things like that, but instead it ended up being a level-based brawler, which it was still a fun game, I still enjoyed it, but definitely, was a bit of a letdown and felt more like a tech demo at times with the particle effects, but, it was still neat to see these companies still try new things at the time, and then with the Wii U, while wasn't the best system, it was, you had some unique titles at launch with, like, Nintendo Land being a pack-in title. I thought that was pretty fun. It got old pretty quickly because you didn't have too many games, right? But was fun and unique multiplayer, right? Where one person has a gamepad, the rest are on Wii remotes. But that was kind of the problem with the Wii U, is you needed like a bunch of Wii remotes still, right? And yeah, it was just a bit of a mess. And then, you have Zombie U, which was like a reboot or remake of an old Ubisoft game, and yeah, it was really cool on Wii U because very intense that, you have kind of your inventory stuff on the gamepad, and, you're looking through the backpack trying to sort your items, and while you're sorting, like, a zombie could come and attack you. It was really cool and just super, super fun. And while, yeah, the Wii U didn't really end up being the hit that Nintendo wanted to be, the Switch kind of took a lot of Wii U's or failures to enhance them on the Switch, right? But it was still a cool system. I really enjoyed the Wii U, and Miiverse was the big attraction. I wish Nintendo would bring back Miiverse because, man, it was so fun. And yeah, the Switch just killed it because exclusive titles, third parties were supporting it again with their own kind of exclusives or timed exclusives. Maybe just a physical exclusive like Octopath Traveler, right? Because Nintendo published that game along with a few others from third party stuff, but was really neat to see. And that's where PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles, it was just kind of disappointing to see the lack of these exclusives, because on Xbox, I'm not sure there was really one on there, because there was Halo Infinite, but I believe you can play that on Xbox One, and yeah, I'm not sure how many games are actually you need a Series console to play, whereas PlayStation 5, it was pretty much just a remake of Demon's Souls, Returnal, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, right? But there wasn't too many, like Final Fantasy VII Remake and then Rebirth. Yeah, they started as exclusives, but those ones probably shouldn't have been exclusive, just like I get the idea and the partnership between Square and Sony, but yeah, it was same with Final Fantasy 16, like those ones should be on everything, but yeah, it's just kind of sad to see for these current ones of PS5 and Xbox Series that we just don't see those exclusives nearly as much. And then going on to handheld gaming, this was probably the most unique you would get for these consoles, and they had to be unique because, you were dealing with much less powerful hardware. Like consoles, you were already dealing with less powerful hardware compared to PC. Handhelds was even lesser than that, right? And it was just cool to see the evolution, because with Nintendo, I always like to describe stuff like the Game Boy Color as like NES, and then the Game Boy Advance was like a step up to Super Nintendo style. And then DS was kind of like, okay, this is your N64 experience with some games. And then 3DS was, okay, here's your GameCube type experience with some games, right? And man, it was so cool. And the DS was like the coolest, most unique games you would get on there, because we never seen a handheld like this before, of two screens and the touch screen, a microphone control for some games too. And yeah, it was just really, really neat to see both first party and third parties get on now, because it was a casual system. Yeah, you got a lot of shovelware just like with the Wii, but it was still really cool to see. One of my favorites that came out, which it came onto other consoles later on, like the PSP and mobile, but Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. Man, that was really cool, and really cool use of touchscreen controls as well. It was a really fun, unique game, and yeah, having that old Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 top-down style, and just great story, great characters, and yeah, it was a ton of fun to play. And yeah, I love the DS. And then going to PlayStation, Portable, and Vita, like those were really cool experiences, because this was kind of, the start of having as close as a console experience on the go, before the Switch came along, where, and of course all the other handheld PC ones, the Steam Deck and Asus ROG Legion Go, right, and things like that. But yeah, it was really neat to see a lot of RPGs on the PSP, especially. It was really cool. Yes, it only had one thumbstick, and yes, using UMDs isn't great. Using any discs is not ideal for portable systems, right? But still, really awesome system. Love it. And then the Vita. I wish Sony did not give up on the Vita this easily, because it's still one of my favorite handhelds ever. It is awesome. It's just so cool. And yeah, a lot of unique games, unique experiences, because yeah, you got touchscreens everywhere, on the front, on the back, and two thumbsticks now. It was really neat. And yeah, I just I love that it was like a PlayStation 3 experience on the go. A lot of games were cross-play on both the Vita and PS3. I thought that was really, really awesome, right? And then probably the last one I'll just quickly talk about is the 3DS itself, because that was an RPG machine itself. Like, man, there's so many role-playing games I still have to play that are exclusive to the 3DS. One of Bravely Default will be coming to Switch 2 very soon, but yeah, it was just really fun to see. And it wasn't as evolutionary as the DS, right? Because it was just like, okay, here's 3D along with gyroscope and AR tech, but a lot of that stuff was kind of gone pretty quick. Like gyroscope kind of stayed a bit longer, but yeah, definitely the 3D and AR stuff, like, yeah, a lot of games later on didn't even really use it, but it was still awesome machine. And besides like the Switch, it, like, the 3DS is my favorite handheld system. Like the Switch, I'm still contemplating on, like, okay, do I consider it a home console or a handheld, because I mostly play as a home console, right? But either way, yeah, the 3DS just awesome, game after game after game, super fun. And so, yeah, I just wanted to talk about console exclusives and things like that. So let me know what you think in the comments down below about console exclusives yourself. Do you miss how they were back in the day? Does having the lack of console exclusives mean that you're possibly going to PC now? Things like that. As have to say, if you're console gamer, most likely you're still going to be playing on consoles, and of course Switch 2 is still going to have those Nintendo exclusives, right? But yeah, it's just different, but people will still stay on console, I think, just because, again, people want an easy way to play games, don't have to worry about PC of setting everything up and the pop-ups you get on PC and everything like that. But of course, like I said before, with like Steam Deck and these handheld PCs, it's just a lot easier to play PC games than it's ever been before. But again, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this talk, and I'll see you next time, everyone. Thanks, have a great rest of your day. Hey everyone, thanks for watching, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you saw, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to see more. Also follow me on X, Twitch, Bluesky, and I am back on Facebook now. All links will be on my About page, so follow me there. Even if it's just for the skits I do, I need someone to follow me. Okay, probably not the best way to encourage people, but anyways, I'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.